Yeah, I guess it's one of those words or those terms that gets used in different ways. You could probably ask 5 people and get 5 different meanings. But the way I see it, it's essentially information you can apply to make a decision. So be it information you can apply to make a business decision, or in the cyber world, is it information I can apply to better protect myself or react or respond to something. So the key there is information that can be used to make a decision. So it's beyond just data. And I guess the general term we use is context. Context is king. A bit of data is great, but what's the context around it? What's relevant to me? What's relevant to my business, my sector? And that becomes an intelligence, but it's only intelligence if you can apply it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good description, and it's a great segue into what we were chatting about before. And I'll flash up a slide. Is you probably hear this a lot. People come running to us with an IP address and say, "Oh, I've got a bad IP out on the internet. What are you doing about it?" And we try and think about threat intelligence in 2 ways, obviously strategic and tactical. So for those of you who are or are not familiar with the pyramid of pain, it's generally the hierarchy of detection. So it is much easier and more trivial to change your IP address, to change a hash. So threat intelligence, when you're talking at the bottom of the pyramid, I think lends itself towards tooling, your antiviruses, your firewalls. When you talk about strategic threat intelligence, so you talk about the ways actors behave, the tools they use, they're very hard to change. So when we think about threat intelligence, specifically, that higher order flashpoint style threat intelligence, I think of strategic. So if you've got any comments around that, Brett?
Yeah, 100%. I think even more, I think it's fair to say probably 5 years ago or more, IOCs were incredibly valuable, right? Because actors were reusing the same binary files, the same command and control structures. And, it was relatively, I put the inverted commas, easy to detect. Nowadays, with ransomware as a service, malware as a service, everything sort of being driven as a service, every single attack is almost unique. So an IOC that might hit me may not be the same IOC that hits you, even though it could be the same ransomware family. So it's still important because it's low-hanging fruit, and there's still a lot of low-hanging fruit out there in the commodity malware space. But looking at strategic, at the behaviours and being able to operationalize that information, right? Like, what are the actors doing? What are the techniques they use? What things can I detect on my endpoint or my network, or even externally, is important.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a great summary. And then the overarching question is, well, how do you operationalize threat intelligence? So when we think about tactical threat intelligence, tends to be the easiest way is to have good trusted tools. You can use intelligence feeds if you're a little bit more advanced. But when I think about using threat intelligence, at least if you're going to start out in that as an endeavor, is looking at strategic threat intelligence. And for me, the key is to be systematic and confirm what your sources are. Is it going to be Flashpoint? Is it going to be the ACSC, or a combination of the two? And systematically reviewing it. And then more importantly, doing something with it. It's all good and well to read, the fear campaigns that are out there all over the internet. But if you're not committing to threat hunt with it or use that threat intelligence in a known way, then perhaps you failed already. Do you see much of this out in the industry, Brett?
Yeah, it's not trivial, right? There's some easy low-hanging, fruit, tactical, strategic intelligence. What's going on in the Ukraine? How does that apply to me? Does it impact my business? That type of thing. But then that's that. What do I need to know to be effective? And there's so much information. How do I filter it down? So I sort of always use the analogy of the CFO of an organization can't make a business strategic decision without understanding the stock market, the financial market, what's going on in the industry. In cyber is the same. So you've got to educate yourself on actors, what's coming, what techniques they're using, etc. Like even here at Flashpoint, we track vulnerabilities, and we track it from an actor engagement perspective, who's using them, who's operationalizing them. And I think we track over 90,000 vulnerabilities that do not have a CVE attached. So if your intelligence is purely relying on a CVE database for vulnerabilities, then you're essentially missing out on a lot. And out of those vulnerabilities, I think last year there was like 40% of those were high and critical. So there's a lot of vulnerabilities being used by threat actors that don't even have a CVE attached because they happen to be undocumented or just known new vulnerabilities that haven't been declared to NIST or MITRE. So how do I use that, right? And how do I apply that is important.
Yeah, I think that's really true what you're saying. And if I could summarize what we're both saying is have a trusted source of threat intelligence that you use. Systematically check that threat intelligence. It's not there to scare you. and then have a plan to do something with it. And if you can put those three things down in a paragraph, then I think you've got the hallmarks or the commencement of a threat intelligence capability.
Yeah, I think the key there is, you mentioned writing it down, but reality, what we call that is, what's my intelligence requirement? And that could be a very simple line, or it's a question you want to ask the data. Because if you don't have an intelligence requirement, you don't know what data you need to be able to answer that question and where to get it from. So it could be a simple matter as, do I have a compromised credential that's been sold somewhere? Well, that's a requirement. How do I go and find that out? Where can I get that data from? Is it reliable? And how do I operationalize it if I do have a compromised credential? We call that intelligence requirements. I just call it the question I need to answer my data,
Really well said. Look, thanks for your time. Appreciate it, Brett.
No worries. Thank you.